collection with life-saving potential.
There are several people around the world that are waiting for me to finish this process so that I can share our list with them so they can see what we've got.
Bigger tires mean big business, even in the snow.
So very easy to ride, lots of surface area for you to actually have amazing traction.
Funding for this program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Sue and Edgar Wackenheim III, and contributions to this station.
Hi, I'm Mike Zeman. Thanks for watching SciTech Now. A wood collection doesn't sound very exciting. In fact, students and faculty at Penn State ignored a rare collection for more than 40 years. But one professor knows it has potential. He just needs to decode its past. Producer Bill Holloman has the story.
Dr. Charles Ray has spent the last 3 years updating a spreadsheet. 1,500 entries and counting. Each line contains names, dates, and locations. It's tedious work. Part data entry, part mystery. A mystery that may have been lost to time had Ray, a Penn State professor, not written a blog post about collecting wood.
I got a knock on my office door and opened the door, and it was Dr. Bob Baldwin. And he said, well, if you like that kind of stuff, I want to show you something. He pulls out a set of keys, opens it up, and there's this wood collection stuck in this big walk-in closet. And I said, what is this? And he said, well, it's a university wood collection.
Drawer after drawer stuffed with palm-sized wood samples and some important paperwork that gave Ray, a diehard Sherlock Holmes fan, his first clue. Documents trace the collection back to 48 original samples donated in 1909. More than 100 years later, Ray found more than 5,000 specimens in that closet, the sum of some 30 different collections. The only real attempt to organize it started in the late 1950s by a Penn State professor named Newell Norton.
And he had been doing that for more than 10 years, as far as I can figure, and he unfortunately passed away. And he was, see them right there in the middle. He was kind of right in the middle of those boxes there when he passed away. So that was a big problem, is that about half of it then is documented and organized, and the other half is still sort of a mystery that I have yet to solve.
A recent donation added about 6,000 samples, making this one of the largest university collections in the country. If you take a close look, you'll find some interesting stuff, like a hunk of wood taken from an Egyptian tomb, a slice of something called Welwitschia. It's so rare, Ray thinks it's one of 3 or 4 samples available to collectors, and a stump found near Ontario that's carbon dated at 8,700 years.
It's interesting because it was down in the bog and deprived of air and everything else. It's not petrified. It's still a piece of woody wood.
In another 3 years, Ray hopes to have about 8,000 or 9,000 samples identified and labeled in a searchable database. Good thing, because after 44 years on the shelf, this collection is more popular than ever.
There are several people around the world that are waiting for me to finish this process so that I can share our list with them so they can see what we've got. 80 years ago, in fact 100 years ago when this collection was started, it was really just more about collecting them and having them and not exactly knowing what you're going to do with it.
With advancements in imaging, computing power, and biological testing, samples like these could mean new breakthroughs in genetics and molecular composition. And if the past is any indicator, that could mean new breakthroughs in medicine.
Pacific yew was a poisonous tree. The medical researchers found out that the poison, the taxine that was in the plant itself, would actually kill cancer cells in breast cancer for women. Well, the interesting thing about that is if you think about it, say, well, if they could do that for one disease, then you think about all these traditional medicines. It seems like we could synthesize those same chemical compounds to treat a myriad of other kinds of things like that. It may have started 300 years ago with the first scientist that looked through a microscope and identified the cell organism. And so in the short-term run, that 300 years looks like, okay, that whole field has been conquered. But in reality, what we're seeing now is that it's just beginning to open up, and who knows what's going to come out of it.
But first things first. He needs to finish that spreadsheet.
Casey,
An innovative design is turning mountain biking into a four-season sport. That means a boost in business for companies that used to rely solely on skiers.
It's winter, perfect time to enjoy the snow. On a bicycle? As long as it's got very big tires. They're called fat bikes, and because of them, a growing number of cyclists are riding outdoors year-round.
They're just novel. I mean, who thinks that you can ride a bike on snow, right?
You get a grown-up on these and they act like a little kid.
The tires are about twice as wide as regular mountain bikes. They provide a stable platform that can travel over almost any surface. Steve Mitchell started biking in snow in Alaska in the 1980s, long before fat bikes rolled onto the scene.
Eventually, I think people figured out that the bigger the tire, the better.
Once an obscure novelty, fat bikes are becoming the hot new thing. In fact, it's the fastest accelerating portion of mountain biking sales nationwide. Like human-powered monster trucks, fat bikes bounce over hard-crusted snow. With Mitchell's help, fat bikes have gained traction in the Methow Valley of central Washington, a recreation destination made popular by a different winter sport, cross-country skiing. The region has more than 120 miles of Nordic ski trails, the largest such trail system in North America.
People come here to experience this beautiful mountain valley, the old west town of Winthrop, but they also come here to recreate.
And lately, fat biking has become so popular here that Methow Cycle and Sport had to double its stock of fat bikes to meet rising demand for rentals.
And you could just stage all right out of them.
Julie Millart is co-owner of the shop and has become a fat bike enthusiast herself.
Almost everyone knows how to ride a bike. They can easily get on a bike and go, oh, this is familiar to me. I know how to do this.
Recreation on the Methow trails infuses more than $12 million a year into the local economy. And in the winter, recreationists keep Winthrop from becoming a ghost town. Instead, places like Mitchell's Rocking Horse Bakery are packed.
Snow is basically the dollar sign behind the local economy in the winter. And, without it, I don't think you'd have a thriving community.
There's been plenty of snow this year, but snowfall in recent years has been less and less consistent. And that trend is likely to continue as the climate changes. Northwest winters are expected to see warmer average temperatures, leading to more rain and less snow. Nationwide studies estimate the impacts of climate change will curtail spending on snow-based recreation by billions of dollars in the coming decades. That's a big concern for people like James DeSalvo. He's the executive director of the Methow Trails Association.
We think about the way that the environment's going to change here a tremendous amount, and specifically that there won't be any snow some winter. We want to be prepared for that day so that we've got still something to offer tourists who are coming here and really active locals who just love the trail network.
That's where fat bikes come in. Because they work with or without snow on the ground, fat bikes could help places like the Methow survive lean snow years.
And it's going to be like this all week long. Fat bikes are really fun to ride on dirt, in the mud, on the snow. And as we're transitioning either into winter or out of winter, we can still ride fat bikes.
So James and his team have begun making room on the Nordic trails for fat bikes. They use snowmobiles with special grooming tools to create single-track style fat bike trails.
The key is to create something that people want to ride. We were one of the first areas in the nation to allow fat bikes on portions of our trail system. And so we know that there's other types of users that would use our trails year-round if we are just flexible enough and inventive enough to give it a try.
If fat bikes catch on here, there's a chance that cyclists will find themselves in conflict with other winter sport enthusiasts. But so far, that hasn't been a problem in the Methow Valley.
Little slippery out there, huh?
This isn't the only place that's giving fat bikes a try.
Here it's kind of tricky on today's.
It is a little tricky on today's snow.
Alpine ski resorts across the country have begun embracing fat bikes as well. At Mountwood Meadows in Oregon, they're holding periodic demonstrations and offering free test rides.
I was really kind of anxious when I riding it, but it's fun and worth to try.
All right, have fun. So very easy to ride, lots of surface area for you to actually have amazing traction. So pretty much anybody can ride it.
Would it increase the days that I come up here and am active? Yeah, absolutely.
It isn't always a smooth ride, but falling is part of the fun. And not just for the newbies. Even for longtime fat bikers.
You never quite know what the outcome is going to be, and you're often tumbling and hopefully landing in soft snow.
As the climate changes, the outcome for winter sports is unclear as well. But the enthusiasm over fat bikes holds promise for people who want to keep places like Mount Hood and the Methow Valley popular winter destinations, regardless of how much snow falls.
Some stroke victims have trouble walking due to an uneven gait. Physical therapy often requires expensive and cumbersome equipment. Now, a mechanical engineer and a physical therapist have teamed up to develop a device that's much easier to use.
This is the Computer-Assisted Rehabilitation Environment, or CAREN. It's housed at the University of South Florida with a price tag of over $1 million. Only a handful of universities utilize them for research.
It's basically a split belt treadmill, so the two treads can move at different speeds, mounted on a 6-degree of freedom base, so we can rotate it, twist it, move it up and down and all around. It's got a 180-degree screen, so you can put virtual reality environments in front of you. It has 10 cameras that track markers that we can place in various places on the body. We use it to understand how people can walk and how we can change their gait patterns.
Dr. Kyle Reed is a mechanical engineer with a passion to help people who need physical therapy. He decided to create a new device that would be less expensive and more accessible to patients who have difficulty walking.
I had seen a split belt treadmill, and that was the inspiration for the shoe. The point of this shoe is that it lets people train in the real world where they're actually going to be active and doing the motions that they are going to be walking.
The shoe he's referring to is the Gait Enhancing Mobile Shoe, or GEMS. Dr. Kyle teamed up with physical therapist researcher Hooni Kim at USF School of Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation Sciences. The goal? To develop this new device for stroke survivors.
Individuals with stroke, they tend to putting more weight on their good side. Then if you don't use their affected side, then you're going to lose it.
This GEMS shoe is 7 years in development. After going through several iterations, they came up with a device ready for study. They're now in the middle of testing the device on stroke survivors. Diane is the 4th patient to be tested. Although her stroke occurred 7 years ago and caused extensive damage, she was determined to join the study.
In the beginning, I was kind of scared, but I got used to the shoe, so then I think I did pretty good. As I've been using it, I noticed there's some changes at home. I'm able to walk faster, and my knee moves, and my toes, I've noticed they're starting to move. And those are a couple of things that didn't happen before.
Dr. Kim has Diane take steps along a gait measuring walkway that has sensors to measure her walking pattern.
We are comparing their spatial temporal variable. Spatial means stride length and how each toe is deviated from the linear line. And temporal variable means how long they take a step.
We put this shoe on the healthy side, which seems a little counterintuitive, but it's actually working on the impaired side. In some sense, it makes the healthy leg less stable, and so it is causing them to have to spend more time and try harder to walk with their impaired leg.
Dr. Reed's design is based on the spiral.
Standing on the shoe, there's basically these asymmetric wheels that as you put down weight, there's an asymmetry of where the axle force is and where the ground reaction force is. So as you push down on it, it causes the wheel to rotate. That rotation causes the shoe to go backwards. And so it's mimicking a split belt treadmill in the sense that when you step down, it's causing your foot to go backwards.
He's usually present during each evaluation and training.
So sometimes during the training sessions, there's a piece that breaks or something's not quite working right, so I have to go and grab it, fix it up, and kind of work on it. Putting it on them and seeing and getting their feedback is immensely valuable to find out what parts are not working as well so we can redesign those and to keep the ones that are working very well.
These clinical trials are being run with very strict protocols.
We looking at her walking pattern, provide very minimal guidance. And also we have to check blood pressure and respiratory rate as well as heart rate.
Sometimes research engineers like Dr. Reed experiment with their designs.
There's a device we came up with called the kinetic board. In some sense, it's a very large version of the GEMS. You actually kind of lean back and forth, and that rocking back and forth motion engages the back wheels and the front wheels, and that allows you to propel yourself forward. And we've actually found that it demonstrates the principle of the GEMS. Because it's much bigger, you can see it moving, you can understand how the pieces are working. Another spin-off that we had from it was taking that same wheel shape, but putting it on the end of a crutch. So it's not an entire wheel shape, but it's more of a curve that is asymmetric from front to back. The same principle as the GEMS, when you push down, because it's asymmetric, it causes a forward motion that is going to assist you while you're walking on the crutch. With the kinetic crutch tip, it allows you to plant down, and then once you get into the motion, it will propel you forward.
Whatever the challenge, Dr. Reed is focused on helping people.
I started learning more and more about the physical therapy realm and really just got a passion for it that I wanted to make these devices more effective so that I can help people restore their motions that they have.
For test subject Diane, she's well on her way to restoring some functionality to her gait.
But normal overnight walking, she improved about 20% of improvement in the walking speed. And step length about 10 to 20% so far, and also we can see more symmetrical gait pattern. We expected to a certain extent, but the outcome we are looking at is beyond what we expected. This is very promising.
Well, I know I'm never going to be 100%, but you know, I want to get as close to that 100% as possible, and I think this shoe is really helping out.
The goal is to be able to mass produce the GEM shoe and make it available to all patients in the near future.
I would love to see the GEMS be available at either a rental model or low cost for purchase, where people could go into a clinic, learn how it works, and then come back and take it with them to home. And they could train every single day for a month, 2 months, however long they need it to be able to get to the walking ability that they want.
In May of 1927, Charles Lindbergh became the first person to fly solo over the Atlantic. Nearly a century later, his grandson is carrying on the family legacy of innovation. Reporter Andrea Vasquez spoke to Eric Lindbergh via Google Hangout.
Eric Lindbergh, thanks very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So how does Powering Imagination and your company's mission, it's taking a couple steps from where your grandfather Charles Lindbergh left off. What are you trying to accomplish, and why is it such a difficult task?
Aviation and just flight is difficult. The energy that it takes to get you up in the air, even in an airplane, the heavier you are, the more energy it takes. And the more energy, the more weight. So it's a feedback loop that's really difficult to solve. Gasoline has huge amounts of energy in it. So we've been able to use that since the Wright brothers started flying. And of course, my grandfather, New York to Paris in 1927. Batteries don't quite have the same energy density as gasoline. So that's why we're not seeing them flying regularly now. But this technology promises to be clean and quiet and potentially renewable. And so we need to make that happen faster.
Because it's not only, like you were saying, it's not only the weight and the noise, but it's the space that you're taking up. One thing that is so hard to accomplish is just basically a vertical takeoff, right? As opposed to doing those long landing strips. How do you even engineer that?
I've been saying that the holy grail of flight or electric flight is sort of clean, quiet, vertical takeoff. Now, if you look at drones flying, for example, you see quadcopters and they're doing amazing aerobatics and carrying cameras and things. If we can scale that up so that drones can carry humans, you'll be able to see and envision how we move around in the future.
How do you envision that future?
Well, I think I've been watching 3 or 4 development efforts with vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. So much like quadcopters or drones or multiple propellers along the leading edge of an aircraft. And what this does is it enables us to carry passengers vertically, translate horizontally some amount of distance, depending on the energy we can store in batteries, and then return to Earth. And I think it'll change the way we move around and lessen our dependence on the infrastructure of roads.
So you're really talking about, for everyday use, potentially supplementing or replacing cars?
It's a difficult problem, though, because gasoline has so much energy. It enables us to fly, even in some cases like helicopters, vertical takeoff, translate land. But batteries, even though they're powering electric cars, don't have enough energy density, and aircraft are mass constrained. It means the amount of volume and space and weight that we can carry in an aircraft is limited. Batteries aren't quite there yet. The good news is that billions of dollars are being spent in research and development towards the energy density of batteries. So it's coming.
And when you're talking about energy density, basically they are heavier than gasoline and not providing as much energy as gas does for the same weight.
Just picture the battery in your car. When it drains out and is all empty of its energy, it still weighs a ton. And gasoline, when it burns out, it weighs a lot less. So an airplane is actually a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient when it's running out of gas.
So is this effort and innovation, is this really being driven by outcry about sustainability and some of the environmental impacts and those issues, or is it more because the technology is now becoming available?
I became aware of electric propulsion for aircraft about 9 years ago. And I thought that solved a lot of the problems that I was seeing in aviation. Fuel burn, leaded fuel, noise, renewable energy. Those are the threats that we're seeing in aviation. One of the biggest threats is noise. If we can realize electric propulsion for flying in general aviation aircraft, just fixed wing aircraft, that'll be great. It'll help make it more pleasant to fly. If we can start to realize vertical takeoff and landing, it'll shift the way we transport ourselves. I've flown an electric airplane. It was incredible.
Really?
It was quiet. I took off and I was supposed to put it back down on the runway again, but I decided I was going to take it around the pattern. And so I turned to the guy standing on the taxiway while I was flying by and said, I'm going to go around instead of using my microphone, which I'm used to using. It was that quiet.
When do you think we could reach this Jetsons-esque future?
I think we could start to realize this clean, quiet future of flight in the next few years. And it's going to start with small, limited range aircraft. It may end up being hybrid, a combination of gas turbine and electric. And I think within 15 years, we'll start to see regional commuters flying.
Eric Lindbergh, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrea.
You can watch full episodes of SciTech Now on demand and on WPSU's YouTube channel. I'm Mike Zeman. Thanks for watching.
Funding for this program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Sue and Edgar Wachenheim III, and contributions to this station.